The auction floor was freezing, not just in temperature, but in feeling. The lights were too bright, and the air smelled like oil and metal. Alien merchants shouted prices while rich buyers walked past rows of cages. In one of the last cages, behind a glass wall, stood 3 alien girls. They were silent, holding each other's hands tightly. Their names were not called. Only a tag above their heads read, "Sterile, useless for breeding. Clearance price." They had been standing like this for hours, maybe longer. People passed, looked at them, then kept walking. Some laughed, others shook their heads. One tall alien woman pointed and said, "Pretty faces, but no future." The youngest girl, barely 18 in Earth years, looked down in shame. Her name was Ilari. Beside her stood Sira and Lyra. Both older, both broken inside. None of them had family anymore. Their clans sold them when tests showed they were sterile. No babies meant no worth in their world. The auction house bought them for almost nothing. Now they were being resold to whoever would take them. Maybe for cleaning, maybe for worse. Ilari whispered, "Do you think we'll be taken today?" Sira didn't answer. Lyra just stared forward, her jaw tight. "I hope not." Then the crowd grew quiet for a moment. A human man walked in with 2 small children. He was tall but looked tired. Dust covered his boots, and his coat had a patch on the elbow. The little girl beside him clutched a stuffed toy with only one eye. The boy walked close to his leg. Avoiding all eyes, other buyers laughed. "What's a human doing here?" "This isn't a pet store," but the man didn't react. He walked past golden-skinned dancers, past warrior-class aliens with perfect genes. He ignored the voices. He was looking for something very specific. Then he stopped, right in front of the cage with the 3 useless girls. Ilari froze. Was he going to complain? Insult them? But he just looked at them for a long time. Then he asked the auctioneer, "Are they kind?" The alien laughed. "Kind? Sir, they're broken. They can't." The man repeated, "Are they kind?" The auctioneer blinked, unsure how to answer. Yes, they. They don't fight. They obey. They're quiet." The man turned to his children. "What do you think? Will they be good company?" The little girl nodded slowly. The boy whispered. She sang, "The one with silver hair." I heard it without another word. The man pulled out a credit chip. "I'll take all 3, he said. Gasps filled the room. Someone shouted, "Why would you waste money on them?" Another said, "You could buy 5 workers for that price." But he ignored everyone. He signed the sale contract with a calm hand. And when it was done, he didn't wait for staff. He walked over and opened the cage door himself. The girls didn't move. He looked at them and said, "You're free to walk, not crawl." Sira whispered, "You bought us." "No," he said, "I brought you home." He placed a folded blanket in Ilari's hands. "Let's go," he said softly. "My house isn't big, but it's warm." The girls stepped out slowly, like deer afraid of a trap. Lyra kept looking back, thinking someone would stop them, but no one did. The auctioneer just scratched his head, muttering, "Strangest sale all year." As they walked through the crowd, whispers followed. Who is he? What does he want with broken girls? Is he mad? But the man didn't look back once. His children walked beside the alien girls without fear, and something warm started growing in Ilari's chest. It wasn't hope, not yet. But it was something close, and that was the moment everything began to change. The road to the house was quiet and full of dust. The sun had started to go down when they reached a small wooden gate. It creaked when the man pushed it open. Behind it stood a simple home, not big, not new, not special. But there was something peaceful in the way it stood, like it was used to holding pain and still standing tall. The man led the way, while the children followed without speaking. The 3 alien girls walked slowly behind their feet, were sore, but they said nothing. They were used to worse. The man opened the door and stepped aside. He waited for the girls to enter first. Sira hesitated, but Lyra walked in. She was tired of waiting for kindness to vanish. Inside the house was not fancy, but it smelled. Clean soap bread and something warm in the air. A pot of soup was on the stove, old furniture was pushed to the side to make space. There were toys on the floor and drawings taped to the wall. This was not the house of a rich man. This was the house of a real one. Elari stood frozen in the doorway. She looked at the little girl sitting on the couch with her stuffed toy. The child smiled shyly and waved. For a second, Elari forgot how to breathe. The man brought out 5 bowls. He poured soup in each one and placed them on the small table. No one spoke for a while. They just ate. The taste was simple, but warm. None of the girls had eaten like this in years. No guards, no cages, no chains. Just food and silence and the feeling of being allowed to exist after dinner. The man showed them where they could sleep. There was only one bedroom. It belonged to the children. He gave the girls a mattress in the living room, old but soft. He handed them pillows and a single thick blanket. Without a word, he placed it in Elari's arms again. Sira tried to refuse. She said, "We can sleep on the floor," but the man shook his head. "Not in my home, not ever." He turned to the children. "You share the bed tonight. I'll take the chair." The boy tried to protest, but the man raised one hand gently. "It's all right, they need it more." The girls lay down close to each other, their hearts still unsure, their minds still whispering, "This cannot be real." But no one yelled, no one hit, no one locked them in. Late at night, Elari heard soft crying from the bedroom. The little girl was having a bad dream. Without thinking, Elari stood up and walked to the door. She opened it slowly and sat beside the child. She began to hum a soft song, one her own mother used to sing. The crying stopped, the child curled up against her and fell asleep again. Elari stayed there until her eyes began to close. For the first time in years, she felt useful, not for work, not for value, but for love. In the morning, the man made tea and sliced bread. He looked at the girls and said, "One thing, you need names." They looked at him, confused. "Names are for free people," he said. "What do you want to be called?" Lyra spoke first. She kept her name. It was the only thing her parents gave her. Sira followed and said, "I will keep mine to Elari." Thought for a long time, then she said, "Call me Hope." The man nodded. "That's a strong name." But outside the house, something was happening. A black hovercar parked across the street. Inside it sat the auctioneer. He watched the house with narrow eyes. Beside him was a tall alien in a business suit. He said, "I don't trust this human." The girls were not meant to be taken for kindness. The auctioneer replied, "We didn't expect him to actually pay." Now the buyer from Sector 12 is angry. He wanted one of them for experiments. They both stared at the house. The man inside didn't know it yet, but trouble was coming, and this time it would not knock. The morning was quiet and bright. The sun filled the small house with golden light. The children laughed as they helped wash the dishes. The 3 alien girls sat near the window. They were watching birds, real birds, not the metal ones from the auction cages. Hope smiled as the little girl braided a small string into her hair. She had never been touched with love before. Every day in the house felt like a new page, but behind that piece, something dark was moving closer. The man stood outside fixing the fence. His hands were rough and strong, but his heart was gentle. He did not ask for anything from the girls, no work, no debt, only respect and kindness. Suddenly, a shadow passed over him. He looked up and saw a black hovercar. It was parked near the edge of the property. Too clean to quiet his eyes narrowed inside the car. The auctioneer was watching. He turned to the tall man in the suit. He said, "There, he is the one who took them." The tall man opened the door and stepped out. He wore a smooth gray uniform and dark glasses. No smile on his face, he walked up to the man and said, "I am here for the property." The man did not move. He said, "I bought them fair and legal," the stranger replied. "There was an error. Those girls were reserved for a private client. You do not have the clearance to override it." The man crossed his arms. "I have the documents. The sale is registered. They are not property anymore." The stranger pulled out a small device. He showed a contract with flashing red marks. "This contract has been cancelled. There was a glitch in the system. They were not meant to be sold to a civilian. The man stayed calm, then show me the order. Show me who wants them, and why. The stranger's eyes turned cold. That is not your concern, back inside the house. Hope felt her skin crawl. Something outside was wrong. Sierra moved closer to the children. She whispered, "Stay behind me." Lyra walked to the door and peeked through the curtain. She saw the man standing tall, but not smiling. He looked like a stone. The stranger leaned, in his voice sharp return. "The girls, or you will be charged." The man took a breath, then spoke. "They're not going anywhere." The stranger stepped back. "Very well. Then you will be visited again." He turned and walked back to the hovercar. The auctioneer followed, looking nervous as the car flew away. The man came inside. He did not speak at first. He sat down, took off his coat, then looked at the girls. "Someone wants you back," he said, "but you are safe here. No one touches you without your yes." Hope asked, "What if they come again?" The man answered, "Then I will still be here," Sierra whispered. "Why are you doing this? We are nothing. We cannot give you anything." He looked at them. "You give my children peace. You give this house laughter. That is everything." The girls stared at him. No one had ever said such words to them, but that night, the sky above the house turned red. A warning drone flew over the roof, and a message played loud. "Unauthorized guardianship detected. Return subjects to sector authority. You have 48 hours. The message repeated twice, then flew away. The children woke up scared. The girls stood in the middle of the room, and the man stood at the window. His jaw was tight, his hands were shaking. But not from fear, from something deeper, rage. He turned to them. "Pack what you need. We are not staying here," Lyra asked. "Where will we go?" he replied. "Somewhere they cannot follow, outside the stars." Watched in silence, the family of 5 was now a target. But none of them were going to run alone. They were not broken anymore. They were chosen. And the world was about to find out what that meant. The man did not sleep that night. He packed quietly while the others rested. He moved like someone who had done this before, as if he had once run from something long ago. Maybe he had. Maybe that was why he understood the fear in their eyes. At sunrise, the children were ready with small backpacks. The alien girls stood together, not knowing what to carry. They had never packed for freedom, only for transport or cages. The man gave them soft jackets and old boots. He gave Hope. The stuffed toy, his daughter loved it, was torn but warm. She held it against her chest like it was something precious. They left the house without looking back. The road was quiet and covered in morning mist. Birds flew across the sky. The wind was cold but gentle. They walked fast but stayed low. The man knew cameras might be watching. After 3 hours, they reached the edge of the town. There was a broken gate, and a faded sign that read, "Restricted." Beyond it was a forest, dark, wild, unmarked on most maps. Lyra asked, "Is it safe in there?" The man said no, but it is safer than where we were. They entered the forest without a sound. The trees grew thick, and the ground was uneven. The girls slipped but caught each other. The children walked like they had done this before. Hope wondered how many times. They had been forced to leave everything behind. By noon, they found an old cabin. Hidden behind rocks and trees, its roof was bent and one window was broken, but the door was strong and the walls were thick. The man said, "This used to belong to someone I trusted." He cleared dust and started a fire. Soon the cabin was filled with warmth. The children laughed again. The alien girls sat by the flames. It was small, but it felt like home. Hope whispered, "Why are you risking so much? We are nothing. Just leftovers from another world." The man looked at her and said, "That is not how my children see you." "That is not how I see you either." Outside, the wind howled, the sky darkened, and far away, deep in the forest, a tracker drone flew past the tree line. The tall man in the gray suit stood in a control room far from the cabin. He stared at the screen. "Sector 21, no signal yet. Keep scanning," he said to the machines. The auctioneer paced behind him. He said, "Why not just send in the retrieval team now?" The man in gray replied, "Because we want to know why he took them. There is something strange about him." Back in the cabin, the man opened a hidden box under the floorboards. Inside were old photos. One showed a woman with alien eyes holding a child. Another showed the man in a military uniform. Hope saw the photos and asked who was she. He replied, "My wife, she was like you. They said she was useless, but she gave me everything." The girls listened in silence. He continued, "She died protecting others. I will not let that happen again." The night grew darker, strange sounds echoed through the forest. But inside the cabin, there was peace, until a knock came at the door. Everyone froze. The man reached for a tool hidden by the wall. Another knock, slow, even no words, just the sound of knuckles on wood. He stepped to the door and asked, "Who is it?" A voice replied, "If you open this door, I will not hurt you. But if you wait too long, they will come, and they will not knock." The man opened the door carefully. Outside stood a woman in a cloak. Her eyes glowed faint blue. She looked like no human he had ever seen. She said, "You do not know me, but your wife once saved my life. Now I will return the debt." The girls stood behind the man. Hope stepped forward. The woman looked at her and said, "You carry her kindness, but also her fire." The man asked, "Can you help us?" The woman nodded. "I can buy you time, but you must keep moving. They have sent hunters now, not just trackers." She reached into her cloak and gave him a small device. "This will hide your heat signal. It will last 3 days." The man nodded once the woman turned and disappeared into the forest. Like smoke, he closed the door and turned to the others. "We leave again at sunrise, but we are not alone anymore." Hope held the toy tighter. This was not just a rescue anymore. This was war, and they were not weak, not anymore. The fog came early that morning, thick and heavy, like a blanket of silence. It wrapped around the cabin and swallowed the trees. No bird sounds, no wind, just fog and stillness. The man stood by the window, watching the shadows shift. He knew this was not natural. Hunters were coming. Inside the cabin, the children packed quietly. Hope helped the little girl with her boots. Lyra tied the straps on a bag filled with food. Sierra loaded a bundle of blankets and tools. They all moved like they had done this before. Like they were no longer afraid of leaving. The man opened a wooden box in the corner. Inside was an old energy rifle. Scratched and dusty but still ready, he held it for a long moment, then placed it over his shoulder. He looked at the girls. "Stay close, and do not run, unless I tell you." They nodded without fear. Even the children were silent as they stepped out of the cabin. The fog closed around them. The world became gray and shapeless. Only their footsteps made sound. They followed the man through the forest, moving between trees and rocks. The path was not clear, but he walked like he remembered every step. Hope whispered, "How do you know where to go?" The man replied, "Because I once ran through this same fog, and someone led me out." Suddenly, the fog shifted. A sound came from behind them, slow footsteps. To many, the man stopped and raised his hand. They crouched, low breaths held. He listened. Voices flat and cold, not human. One said, "They passed this way." Thermal signal faint, but traceable. Another replied, "Orders are to retrieve the subjects. Eliminate the guardian if needed." The children clutched Hope, and Sierra whispered, "They are too close." The man reached into his coat and pulled out the cloaking device. It blinked weakly. "One red light, 2 days of charge left." He handed it to Lyra. "Hide the children. Go left. Follow the white tree with the broken top." "What about you?" she asked. He smiled. "I will slow them down before they could argue." He vanished into the fog. Lyra grabbed the children and moved fast. Hope and Sierra followed their boots, crunching leaves. Every sound felt too loud. Every step felt watched behind them. A beam of blue light cut through the mist. Then another. Explosions of light flashed. Birds flew up in panic. Hope looked back. She wanted to scream, but she kept running. They reached the white tree. It stood tall with a sharp, broken top like a spear. Lyra led them through a hidden path. The trees here were thicker, the air colder. Then they saw it, a cave covered in vines and moss. Almost invisible, they crawled inside. Darkness swallowed them, but it was safe for now. Hope turned and counted everyone for the children. Sarah, Lyra. But no man. She sat by the entrance, watching. Waiting. Hours passed. No sound, no footsteps. Then a figure appeared, stumbling, bloody but alive. The man entered the cave holding his side. He dropped the rifle, it was smoking, and cracked. The children ran to him. Hope caught him before he fell. He said, "I slowed them. But more will come." Sira tore her sleeve and wrapped his wound. She said, "You are bleeding too much." He looked at her and said, "I bled before." For people who never cared, this is different. Lyra asked, "Did you kill them?" He shook his head, "Just scared them." They did not expect a human to fight back. He leaned against the cave wall, breathing slow. Pain in his eyes, but also something else. Fire. Hope whispered. "Why are they still hunting us?" The man replied, "Because people like us, who choose love over profit, are dangerous to them." They all sat in silence. The cave was cold, but their hearts were warm outside. The fog started to lift. But the danger had not passed. The hunters would return stronger, angrier. But so would they. This was no longer a rescue, it was a rebellion, and they were ready to fight for each other. The cave walls were damp and cold. The fire had gone out. Only quiet breathing and the sound of water dripping from stone filled the space. Hope sat beside the man, who now slept with pain across his face. The children curled up against Sira and Lyra. The night was heavy, but a feeling was rising in the dark. Something old, something hidden. Lyra stepped outside at dawn. She stood near the edge of a cliff that looked over a dead forest. The trees were black, no birds, no wind, only silence. She turned when she heard footsteps. Sira joined her and said, "We cannot keep running forever." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with thoughts she never shared. She looked down at her hand. The scar on her palm had started to glow faint purple. Sira saw it and gasped. "How long has that been happening?" Lyra whispered. "Since the auction, maybe before they returned to the cave." Hope was awake. She looked weak. The man had not opened his eyes. His skin was pale. Lyra walked to him and placed her hand on his forehead. Then she looked at the girls. "There is something I need to try. But I do not know if it will work." Hope asked, "What do you mean?" Lyra took a small knife from the pack. She pressed the blade to her hand and opened the scar. Purple blood slid down her fingers. She let it fall onto the man's wound. At first, nothing. Then his chest moved slow. Then steady color returned to his face. The children stared wide. Hope asked, "What are you?" Lyra looked at them. "I was born from a failed royal breeding experiment. They wanted to mix warrior blood with healer blood. But I was sterile. They called me a failure. They threw me away." Sira sat back. "But you are healing him?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, but it drains me." She leaned against the wall, her breathing heavy, but her eyes clear. The man opened his eyes slowly. He looked around. He tried to sit, but Hope stopped him. "You are safe now," she said. He looked at Lyra. "What did you do?" she replied. "What I was meant to do all along." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the cave. "It is beautiful to watch trash try to shine." Everyone turned. A figure stepped from the shadows near the back wall. It was the tall man in the gray suit. Behind him came two hunters in black armor. The children screamed. Sira pulled them behind her. The man tried to stand, but he was too weak. Lyra stepped forward, her hands glowing. The tall man laughed. "You think I came unprepared?" He raised a device, pressed a button. Lyra screamed as her body collapsed. Her blood glowed bright, then faded. Hope ran to her. "No," the tall man said. "Her blood belongs to the labs, not to you." Sira shouted. "She saved him. She saved us all." He raised his hand again, then from the ceiling, a blast of red light struck his arm. He dropped the device and fell back. The woman in the cloak dropped from above. Her eyes burned like stars. She moved fast, striking the hunters one to both. Dropped. She faced the tall man. "You should not have touched what was not yours," he growled. "You are a traitor to your kind," she replied. "No, I am loyal to those who love without chains." The man tried to stand. His voice was rough. "Take the children and run." But the cloaked woman said no need. She pressed a crystal into Lyra's hand. The glow returned. Lyra opened her eyes. Stronger, she stood up, faced the tall man, and said, "You cannot hurt what you do not understand." She raised her hand. The purple lights surged the cave. Walls shook. The tall man vanished and light silence returned. The cloaked woman helped the man sit. "You are almost there," she said. One more step, Hope held Lyra close. You came back, Lyra smiled. I never left outside. The sky began to change. The air felt new and deep in their hearts. They knew the final chapter was waiting. The forest stood still as if it too was waiting. The sun had not risen fully, but a golden light, starting to touch the trees inside the cave. The air was warm, but heavy with decisions. Lyra sat quietly near the wall, her body stronger than before. Her eyes focused the glow in her blood, no longer a burden, but a gift. The man stood with help from the cloaked woman. His face was pale, but his back was straight. He looked at the children who held on to hope, and Sira, he looked at the girls who once stood behind glass and were now warriors beside him. The cloaked woman spoke. You have one chance to disappear. I can take you to the outer colonies. No one will find you there. Hope looked at the man. Is that what we should do? Keep running. He looked back at her, his voice quiet but full. What do you want? Hope held the little girl close. She wanted to be safe. She wanted to sleep without fear, but she also wanted to stop others from feeling the same pain they did. She turned to Lyra. What if we do not run? What if we stand? Lyra nodded. Slowly, we have more than just survival now. We have something to protect. The man looked at the cloaked woman. How many others are like them, thrown away for being different? The woman's eyes were dark. Too many in cages. Too many in labs, too many forgotten. Sira stepped forward. Then we find them, we help them, we do not hide. The man placed his hand on her shoulder. Then we must go to the core. The cloaked woman froze. That is where the masters live, the scientists, the buyers, the ones who built the system. Exactly, the man said. That is where we end it. They moved quickly, packed what they had, left the cave. Behind the journey was long, through silent valleys and broken bridges, through tunnels left behind by old wars. But they did not stop along the way. They found others, discarded lives, silent voices, children with no names, aliens with marks on their skin. All walking with heads down until they saw the man and the girls, until they heard the story and they joined. A small army built not with weapons, but with belief. When they reached the gates of the core world, the guards laughed. You brought workers, they said. Back to sell them again. The man stepped forward. No, I brought witnesses. I brought survivors. Then Lyra raised her hand, her blood glowing bright. The scanners around the gates shorted out. The gates burst open inside. The council of the masters gathered. They watched from towers, confused, angry. Who are these people? They asked. Why are they here then? The cloaked woman removed her hood, and the masters fell silent. She was one of them once. A high-born, a traitor, she spoke. You called them useless. You called them sterile. You said they could never build a future. Then she pointed to Hope, to Lyra, to Sarah. To the children, this is your future. The people began to speak, not in anger, but in truth. One by one, voices filled the plaza. I was thrown out. I was called broken. I was locked away. The masters had no words. They had no chains strong enough to hold that many stories. The man stepped forward. You sold them. You forgot them. But we remembered then. He placed a small chip on the council table. It played a recording evidence named Sales Experiments. The crowd grew quiet. Then a voice whispered, Justice. A single guard dropped his weapon, then another. Then the gates closed behind the masters, and for the first time, the cages were empty, and the halls of power were full of those once cast out. Hope stood beside the man. Lyra held a child who once belonged to no one. Sira opened the doors to the healing chambers. They did not build a new empire. They built a home years later. The auction houses became libraries, the labs became gardens, and the word sterile was never used to measure worth again, because in the end, it was not blood that made family, but the choice to stay, to protect, to love, and that was the last choice they made together.